Most businesses waste money on marketing that doesn't deliver because they skip the strategy. Strategy? Wait, what's that? My guest today, Debbie Oster, fixes that. As a brand and marketing strategist, she helps businesses clarify their positioning, sharpen their message, and build marketing strategies that drive real growth. For small businesses, she turns scattered efforts. Okay, and as I'm reading this, I am reading it. I'm going to tell you guys, scattered efforts, that's what we all do when we first become business owners. It's like throwing spaghetti, let's try this, let's try that. And even established businesses, we sometimes do it. So she turns those scattered efforts into a focused plan that attracts the right customers. I want to welcome today to our show, Debbie Oster. Hey there.
Hey, Denise. Thank you so much for having me today.
No problem. So glad you could be here. So, I want to start out just getting to know you a little bit. When I first met you, you were in Florida. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And then you moved to,
North Carolina. About a little less than a year ago, about 9 months ago, I moved here. We moved everything and started new. And we are so happy to be here in the mountains versus the coast of Florida, which we also love. But it was just time for a change.
okay, so you went from one hurricane-prone area just in time to get hit with Hurricane Helene. Is that correct?
It was just a few months after we moved here, and it was crazy and ironic. And, our hearts just hurt for all the people around us that, had their homes taken from them, and, just the devastation that it caused. We were very fortunate throughout the hurricane and, in the aftermath, but, we know there are a lot of other people that were not in this area.
So for people who are listening that are not familiar with what occurred last September, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Hurricane Helene hit the Big Bend area of Florida, which, Florida's hurricane prone. I can understand why you'd want to, to move. And then it came inland and it eventually turned to a tropical storm, but it had so much rain. It was one of the heaviest rainfall producing hurricanes ever. And so it went up through Georgia and Tennessee, a little bit of Tennessee and North Carolina and the western edge of North Carolina and some of the southwest of Virginia. And there were homes that were washed off of hills, the sides of mountains. It was sad. It was really sad. And the area largely was not prepared for that. So I just wanted to drop that in there for people who are listening in case they weren't familiar with what had happened there. All right. So you have 20 plus years of experience. Tell me how you got started in this market.
Um, you know, it just kind of happened. I was actually a teacher right out of college. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I studied English lit in college. I always thought I wanted to either be a teacher or a writer or both. So I got into teaching, right after, and quickly realized that wasn't what I wanted to do long term. So I was actually bartending as supplemental income. And one day while I was bartending, somebody approached me and was like, "Hey, I have got a job in marketing. I feel like your personality would be a good fit with our team. Do you have any interests?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I started kind of from the ground up, working in a pretty big organization. And I worked my way up, and that kind of was the beginning of my marketing career.
What industry was that?
It was actually the publishing industry. We published uh, compliance and regulatory books for federal.
Boring stuff.
Yeah,
Boring stuff.
definitely. I didn't last there very long.
Okay. So where did you stop next?
My next stop was working for a marketing agency. So that was kind of really my introduction into the world of digital marketing. And I was there for about 3.5 years. I held account management roles. I was a content marketer for them, and I eventually became one of their directors of corporate marketing. So I was marketing our company to our target clients. And it was really educational for me. Great learning experience, met some really wonderful people that I actually still partner with today on various projects.
When did you decide to launch your own business?
That was about 3 years ago now, actually. I always kind of had this thought that I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to create something from scratch. And after many years in the industry and working for a few different companies and organizations or agencies, I decided that I had enough expertise and experience and that it was just time. And if, I kept postponing starting it, it would be that I'd be that much older before it gained traction and momentum and I'd be where I wanted to be. So I just got started.
Okay. So you had this thought and this idea. Was there an inspiration, a person, or something that happened that inspired you to move towards business ownership?
I've always considered my father to be an inspiration for me. He has since passed. He passed about 8 years ago, but he was an entrepreneur. He, was always very successful in his career. He started multiple businesses. He always just had really great ideas, and I loved hearing, his next idea. I feel like he kind of passed that on to me. Even now, it's funny when I'm talking to other people who aren't happy in their careers or with, their job. I always kind of try to pick their brains and figure out like, well, what are you passionate about? What do you love doing? And then I try to talk them into starting their own business. And I, start brainstorming and strategizing like what they could do and how it could be unique. And so, yeah, I definitely would say I got that from my father.
That's a marketable skill too, by the way. Consulting people on career transitions to business
Yeah,
ownership.
I thought about that too.
I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, so we met through a connection we both have in the 10KSB program, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so since then, we worked a little bit with you. And one of the things I've always admired is just how you word things and how your language is very compelling. And oftentimes, people miss the boat on that. They send out a very generic, wishing all the mothers a happy Mother's Day instead of something that's more personal and engaging, or just skipping Mother's Day altogether because there's 999,000 emails, other posts out there that they're competing for attention. So tell me about that strategy and talk about copy and compelling first.
I will. So, first, I think that the reason that, my messaging resonates with people and is compelling is because I've really worked on it a lot over the years. And it stems from really getting to know the ins and the outs, the struggles, the aspirations of who I'm targeting. So, small business owners, they have unique struggles, in comparison to larger organizations or companies with big marketing budgets. And so I've just really learned how to do the proper research to be able to unearth those things that they're really struggling with, and not even, what they say they're struggling with, but going deeper and figuring out kind of like what that root cause is. And it all goes back to strategy. Every time I speak to a business owner and they complain and it's marketing related, or sometimes not even market related, but it usually goes back to you don't have a strategy, you don't have a plan. So to what you said earlier in the beginning, they are literally just throwing things at the wall and hoping it sticks. And it just really never works.
Interestingly enough, I find that sales has a more structured process. And this is somewhat the same thing. That structure is to talk to pain points, which is exactly what you're saying with the marketing. Understanding, their challenges and what motivates them. So it's the same thing with sales. If you're a marketer and you're bringing it in, the salespeople have to be able to speak to that same thing.
Yep. Yeah. I'll give you a really great example. It's just something that I remember all the time when I'm coming up with, messaging for my marketing or for clients marketing. But it was from Seth Godin,
Good. Yep.
Godin, yeah. His book, there is a whole section of it where he's talking about, somebody wanting to hang shelves on their walls. And so he's talking about how, they need the nail and the hammer to put the holes in the wall to hang the shelves. And so if you're selling, the nail and the hammer, you're not really selling the nail and the hammer. You're selling the final product of these beautiful shelves on a wall that gives somebody a place to organize and put things that make their home feel comfortable and look nice. So it's all about figuring out like, what do they really want and how do you speak to that desire versus I've got this thing, I'm going to sell you. This is what it does.
I was at a networking meeting on Friday, and I'll be honest with you, we had some really good storytellers in there. There were a couple of ladies, I know they do spoken word. I know it in my heart. That's how good they were. And then there was one lady who every sentence started with, I this, I that, I this. And there was, interestingly enough, somebody needed that service in there and asked for her card. But here's the thing. If you're not very specifically looking for that, just saying, I do this, my company does this, isn't going to get people jumping up going, hey, I need your card. Telling that story that has that emotional pull, that connection, or that light bulb moment that goes off that says, oh, I need this to do this, and I really want to do this.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you a real quick another example.
Sure.
I was walking through the Small Business Expo about a year ago, and it was, all these various booth and vendors, trying to promote their businesses. And there was one for a CRM. And, I didn't even look twice at it because I wasn't interested in the CRM. It wasn't whatever. It wasn't what I was looking for. But I heard the guy say to, someone he was speaking to, we're like the less annoying CRM. And I thought, that really stands out because as a CRM user, I completely understand what he's talking about. He gets it. Like, people don't want a cumbersome, hard to use CRM that their Salesforce won't actually, implement in the way that it's, built. They want a super easy, simple, user-friendly, less annoying CRM. And so being able to figure out what that thing is and how to say it in the words of your ideal clients or customers is just so impactful when it comes to marketing.
Agreed. I have to agree with you on the CRMs. So we were with one. I won't name bash, but we were with one, and we paid a company to do all these different things. That is another story in and of itself. Let's just say really bad customer service. So I fired them. And they weren't cheap. So we struggled along for a little while. We literally just set up our Asana, which is a project management system, to also act as a CRM. And it integrates. We use Zapier to put our contacts and leads into our MailChimp account, which is where we send emails out of. So we're, making it come full circle. And then we're keeping the contacts also on a spreadsheet. Probably not the ideal CRM. However, what Asana does that this other CRM I was using is it set up the next task for you. Instead of the other one, I had to tell it what the next task was. It automatically sets up the next task and a due date and assigns it to somebody. And that's incredible. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a tool for your marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm familiar with it. I use it with some of my clients, actually. So,
Yeah, I like Monday's a great one too.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Monday might be a little easier to set up too. Just not pitching one, but we were heavily into Asana, so we stayed there.
Yeah.
All right, back to the marketing. What do you see the biggest challenges are for small business owners? And when I say small, maybe 500,000 up to 10 million. So not like a micro, but definitely small.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge for them is, they know they're at a point where they understand how important marketing is for their business, but they're maybe not at a point, except for more the higher end of that range, but a point to where they actually have a sizable marketing budget. They feel like they can invest some money into their marketing. So they're overwhelmed by all of the options out there, all of the things they're being told they need to do, all the different types of marketing, all of the channels. They're stressed and baffled by the costs of all those various channels and tactics, and you know, um, so it's kind of like twofold. It's like, well, I don't really know what I should be doing, and of all the things I could be doing, they're all pretty expensive. So now I'm like, where do I start? What do I do? And so, yeah, I think the most important thing for small businesses is getting really clear on, who are they targeting and where are those people most likely to be hanging out, so that they can get really strategic and only spend money where it makes the most sense versus that spray and pray, like, let me do some Facebook ads, let me do some SEO, you know, let me do all of the things that cost a bunch of money and then not track anything and have no idea where my return came from, if any at all.
Right, right. No, and honestly, I've been guilty of that too. We did a huge push last year with a company for Google Ads, and let me just tell you, I spent a lot of money with that zero coming back. It's unfortunate, you know. I heard the person speak, and I really thought, wow, this person knows the data. They really know what they're talking about. I was so impressed by that I went ahead and gave them a try. And just knowing how marketing works, I know you have to give it at least 6 months. And so we did. We actually went 9 months and still zero return.
I feel your pain. I've done it too, Denise. I've been
It's a hard lesson.
Yeah, it is a hard lesson. And, one thing I can say is I've worked with businesses that were putting money into ads. And there were times when we weren't seeing an immediate ROI, and, 3 months passed, 6 months passed, even 9 months passed, and we still weren't seeing it. However, we we went into the campaign with the objective of generating brand awareness. So it can be very difficult to, be able to attribute those types of campaigns to ROI. But you have, that's what you have to figure out. Like, what am I doing this for? Do I want to generate brand
Mhm.
awareness? If so, I'm probably going to have to run it longer and know that I might not see a direct ROI. Or am I doing this to generate legitimate leads? And if that's the case and you're not seeing an ROI within 9 months, then certainly I would definitely be reevaluating that channel and that investment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we actually did it for 6 months, and then what you said, "Where are your clients?" I was like, "Oh, let's go over to LinkedIn," and I did a 3-month awareness ad over there, and I could tell that we were getting some website traffic, and I was definitely getting more traffic on LinkedIn profiles, so I could tell that it was working. It's just, at that point, yeah, I was kind of ready to move on.
I don't blame you.
It is what it is.
It is.
And, well, and this goes to the point that not everything is right for everybody. They ask us all the time about Facebook ads. It's like, we don't do ads. That's not our lane. It's not some, we can create the creative for the ads, but we don't do the ads themselves. And there are times that, clients ask me and I just want to tell them, you don't want to do that. So how would you approach that with a client who's adamant about they want to do something, whether it's ads or something else, and you know that that is, just from your experience in their industry, that that is not the right place?
Yeah. I think I approach it from kind of an education standpoint. So I like dig deeper, like, first, what are your business goals? What are you trying to accomplish? If it is lead gen, or if it is generating more revenue, or is it actually you want to retain more of your customers? Like, what are your top business goals for the next 1 to 3 years? And then from there I kind of work and say, well, if this is what you're trying to accomplish in the business, these are kind of the 2 or 3 supporting marketing objectives. And then I see, do Facebook ads fall into that? Like, will they help to meet those marketing objectives that ultimately is going to help you meet your business goal or objective? So that's kind of how I work my way through it when I'm having these conversations with a customer, or sorry, a client that's like very adamant, oh, we need Facebook ads. And also just showing them like the data. So, okay, you say you need Facebook, but let me actually take a look at your Facebook account. Let me see, who you're targeting, who you're reaching, who you're not reaching, and who you want to be reaching, and see, like, does it align? Does it not? Is this really where you should be putting money? Or can you get a more bang for your buck using LinkedIn ads, or maybe not ads at all, but maybe content marketing strategy would be better suited for your business and your model and what you're selling. So it's kind of all these things mixed together that you have to look at. And as I'm saying it, it's like sometimes I get tired of saying it, but it does all go back to strategy. And I feel like sometimes my audience is like, oh, yeah, she's talking about strategy again, but like that is it. And that's.
If you want to stop throwing spaghetti against the wall, that's where it starts.
Yep.
Have you ever just flat out told a client, no, that's not in your best interest and I'm not going to do that?
Yeah. And it's typically ad related. One, because I'm not an ads expert and I don't pretend to be. So, if they just come to me and say, we want ads, and I try to talk them out of it, or I try to explain that you really need to start with a strategy and then decide if you need ads. And they're just like, no, we just want ads. I have and will tell them no. And then, other one off type things. Like sometimes people will come to me and say, hey, we need email marketing. And I start to dig a little deeper. I'm like, well, what else are you doing? Well, nothing. So anyways, it's all about asking the right questions and kind of uncovering what they are doing and what they have done. But yeah, I have no problem saying no, because ultimately, what's the point of providing a service or something to someone when deep down it's not going to work, because what you make some money for a short period of time.
That does nothing for your reputation, your brand, nothing whatsoever. And you make an unhappy client, who could spread the word 10 times.
Yep, exactly. And in the meantime, you're not happy doing what you're doing, and they're probably not happy with the results. So
I too turned down people. There was one I recall during the pandemic, and this fellow wanted me to create a website. Now, this guy, we'd worked with him periodically off and on for like 5 years. He was in his 80s. And the website he wanted me, it was at the very beginning. It was about entertainment and music. And I told him, I said, no, I don't, think this thing is going away anytime soon. And I would literally just be stealing your money to do this website. And so we just didn't. I believe he got somebody else to. I think he was not happy with us, but I was happy with what I decided. I felt like that was the right thing to do.
hmm yeah. And it's so funny, Denise, with I feel like with service-based businesses, people just expect you to mold what you do to what they perceive their needs to be. Where like somebody doesn't go into a store that doesn't sell a specific type of thing and say, well, you need to be selling this thing. I want to buy it. They go into the store knowing this person sells this specific thing I'm looking for. But I've found a lot in this industry, especially marketing, they just feel like if you're in marketing in any capacity, you can kind of do it all, or should be doing it all.
Which is not true.
It's the exact opposite. And typically the people that do it all don't do it all very well.
Unless they have lots and lots of people that work with them, then that's a possibility. But no, that's why I said we don't do ads. That is not our sweet spot whatsoever.
Mm.
So tell me, what is the very first thing that you do when somebody comes to you and says, Debbie, I need a strategy?
So the very first thing we do is we get really clear on their business goals. I won't even begin to build out a marketing strategy for someone unless I know what they're trying to accomplish in their business. And it's, I said it earlier, but it's really because when you think about it this way, if they do want to improve customer retention, right? We're not going to build out whole marketing strategy that's supposed to be generating a bunch of new customers or new leads and customers. We're going to first focus on, okay, how could we retain more of our current customers, which is a lot cheaper to do than it is to go acquire new ones, right?
It is.
Right. So yeah, I get real clear on their goals. What do you want? Next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes they don't want to look that far ahead. They're just like, hey, by the end of this year, I need to or would like to hit this goal. And so we figure that out. And then I propose the marketing goals that we're going to work towards. And if they agree upon them, from there, I work to build out the strategy that will align with those goals and help us to reach them.
Okay. All right. And if somebody wanted a marketing strategy, how would they reach you?
They can reach me at my website, debbieoster.com. They can reach me on LinkedIn, also Debbie Oster. And then, just by email. So debbie@debbieoster.com.
All righty then. And so, do you have any freebies or giveaways or white papers they can download there?
If they reach out to me, I do have a marketing guide for 2025. I titled it The Last Marketing Guide You'll Ever Need. And it is not full of hacks and tips and tricks. It is a simple, clear, concise marketing guide for 2025 for small businesses.
Perfect. See, I knew you had something. I just knew you had something. All right. Before we sign off, is there any question I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think you were pretty comprehensive in your questions. But thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Hey, I always like to because, I'm human. Sometimes I miss stuff. Well, I appreciate you being here. We'll make sure that your links are all in our show notes so that folks have them. Okay?
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for being here, Debbie. Thank you for joining me for today's podcast, where I focus on women in business and how we can be allies to one another. Please rate us on the podcast app that you listen to the most, and send me any ideas you have for podcast topics or any other feedback. I love to hear from my listeners. You can reach me at denise@dcavirtual.com.